Okay, welcome everyone to this episode 3 of celebrating Cybersecurity Awareness Month with Cyberpreneur. Joining us today is Mr. Aseem, co-founder of Exploit. Many of you know him. Many in the community know him through different conferences, Nalcon or Hardware IO. Many of us know. Some of you might have known him. So welcome Aseem to the show. Aseem, could you please share your journey in the last 10-15 years in this hardware security domain?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Teja, and thank you, DSCI, for having me. I think roughly in hardware security, we started roughly a decade ago, and we were doing a lot of software security already, and these small smart things started to pop up, and we were like, let's see, what kind of security are they implementing, and that was essentially the whole start of our or my IoT security journey. So we just looked at few devices and how they work. First, we were looking at the software aspect. We found some vulnerabilities, and then we were like, okay, now what? What do we do? And so let's just open it up and see what happens, right? What is there inside? And then we looked at the components, and you know, then it's history. So and then we started our hardware security conference as well, and we started offering this as a service, like doing security assessments for embedded and doing a lot of trainings. So initially, the pivot from software to hardware security. I mean, it's difficult if there's no path for
True.
you, or no guidance for you. But actually, if you look at the core, the concepts are quite similar in terms of the process or the methodology that you would apply. That remains the same. I mean, you obviously have to have a questioning mindset or a hacker mindset, whatever you want to call it. Uh, and the nuances of hardware are different. So you really need to, before even you can think of hardware security, you need to first understand what is hardware. How do microcontrollers work? What is boot process for them? What are the different external storage components or hardware? How is it that the PCB is organized and other stuff, which does not come intuitively, right? So
True.
and yeah, we burned our hands with it. So we went through the hard way, because 10 years ago there was no uh, terms of on the internet, specifically around hardware
True.
security. Bits and pieces here and there. You try to connect the dots and learn, so it was difficult. And yeah, I mean, it's still at a nascent stage if you compare with software, but things have changed in the last 10 years, which I'm really happy to see.
Certainly, certainly. Yeah, you are bang on when you said ki, when there's no path defined, it's actually very difficult, right? And hardware security still is in the infancy, it's in the very nascent stage. And but however, you started working on this like 10 years ago, right? So how did you even come up with, okay, I have to focus on hardware security as compared to, let's say, which focusing on software security, which is much more comfortable, right, as a business also. And what are some of the learnings that you had? What are some of the challenges that you had when you started 10 years before? And how those challenges shaped up, for example, into taking a community driven approach in building an ecosystem for hardware security? Can you share some light on this?
uh, yeah, so I mean, essentially, it was not like a direct, I wouldn't call it like a business requirement that we started getting requests for doing hardware. It was more of more of curiosity on that side, because we started seeing a lot of hardware devices all around ourselves. And then there were few researchers who were talking about something which looked pretty cool as compared to doing normal conventional software security. So that essentially caught my eye. But
Hmm.
on the height side now, if I think about it, I think probably that was the 10-15 years ago was the starting point when people were, not just me but other folks also, were moving into hardware security, and there was quite interesting research being done in silos. So that could be one aspect where people realize that nobody has looked at this aspect. And this
Hmm.
in the tech industry, this has happened over time, right? In the 80s it was 80s and 90s, it was server side security and server side attacks. And then researchers, both good and bad hackers, realized the potential of client side attacks and security. So then slowly it shifted to client side security. And people started finding a lot of vulnerabilities in all different kinds of client software, like browsers and Microsoft Office and Adobe software. And then it shifted to mobile software, when mobile started to pop up. And I think the same thing happened post mobile. The same thing happened for IoT as well.
IoT.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's taken some time now to kind of mature, but it's not in a mature stage till now. But at least now countries and governments have realized the power of hardware, right? And what impact attacks on the hardware uh, has. And that's why now even governments are moving towards creating standards and regulations. So it has been hard, uh, because there was you can't learn something or do something in silo, right?
Hmm.
Everybody needs help, right? So if you just sit down and you think of something, you can't come up with an innovative solution on your own, right? You need a lot of help, which was very difficult at that time, like in the initial years. And then slowly through our community as well, not just hardware community but the null community in India as well, we
Hmm.
started doing certain sessions on embedded and IoT security, which caught the attention of other researchers. And then that's how they started to contribute. And then a lot of researchers started creating open source utilities for hardware security and IoT security, which I think essentially helped a lot, because there were no enterprise grade tooling on IoT and hardware security. So what do you do when you have to professionally do something, right? Interest is fine, something you're doing because you like to do, that is fine. You do not have a scope and a timeline for that. But when it
Hmm.
comes to a professional work, you need to give a timeline in terms of how much time you will take to do a security assessment for a product. And that's when you need tooling for automation. and
True.
so and so this was one good thing, that a lot of researchers started coming up with different open source tools, which helped a lot. I mean, even at this stage, we are still far from perfect automation for
Hmm.
hardware security, but we're getting there. And I think
Okay.
the community contribution has been uh, uh, I would say something that really helped.
Important.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So it's I mean, it's interesting that you've brought up this community driven and open source based approach for building solutions for hardware security, right? So can you share some examples, of different tools that are there, wherein they're extremely popular now because of their community driven, right? And why is essentially community driven agenda important in this context? Because for example, a lot of startups who are starting building, they prefer something and to keep their IP with them, right? So why, in your opinion, being a community driven and open source approach important in this in the context of hardware security?
Yeah, I think it's primarily the scale and speed with which you can develop certain tooling or utility. That's where open source and community driven projects far outrun startups. uh, Startups have their own set of problems, funds, skill set, whereas community does not have this problem, right? And they are doing it out of their own free will, right? So they're not bound by money, they're not bound by time, they're not bound by anything. And so it's really, and this is a standard phenomena in the tech industry, right? We've seen Linux as well. We've seen a lot of other open source projects which are now truly the core of technology, right? You talk about Python,
True.
you talk about web servers, you talk about different services, you talk about the OS itself. These are all now core of the tech industry. Without this, I don't think we'll be able to operate, right? We can't operate on Mac and Microsoft products alone, right?
True.
And that phenomena happened in hardware security as well. A lot of researchers came together, the community, they started building different tools. So there are a bunch of tools. There is Chip Whisperer, which is quite famous for
Side
side
channel.
channel attacks. There is Hydra Burst, there is Glasgow, uh, then there is
Flipper
Expertise
zero.
Framework, there is Flipper Zero, there is Fact tool for firmware analysis. There are a lot of good tools out there now, which I would say would help you learn as well as speed up your security assessment. And then comes your own skill set, right? How
Right.
much do you understand about hardware?
Yeah, so I think for someone who doesn't know what are different areas of working in hardware, right? Can you name some of the areas? For example, side channel. What is a side channel, right? What is a fault injection? How is it different from software based attack? Can you just name some of the areas of working in hardware security, as well as how are those areas different from let's say something like a security in the context of software systems?
All right, okay. Yeah, so essentially, I think the entry point for anyone is functional security on the hardware, which is pretty much looking at the hardware, the components, the communication, and how you can get access into the hardware, and then you can maybe move into specific types of attacks or techniques, like side channel attacks, for instance, which help basically help you identify uh, by examining the power of the hardware, to be able to identify, for example, encryption keys. So we might say that we are implementing, and that's one of the problems. It's been there since the start of the tech industry, from the software. When earlier, in early 2000s or 1990s, when somebody used to talk about secure software security, they would say, yes, we have encryption, we have SSL, right? That is not the definition of software security. It is way beyond that. Even if you have SSL on your application, it can still be attacked. And so the same thing applies to hardware as well, right? You may be using standard encryption techniques like AES, but the way it is implemented is very, very important. And side channel is one way which can help you identify if there are cracks, and hardware gives out the encryption keys or not. Then there is fault injection, basically to mess around with the of logic of the code itself, giving it more power, giving it changing the clock cycles. Basically, you are messing up with how the code would take decision based on an if condition. For example, if it says, okay, if check this is true, you never know, if you changed, gave more power, the zero change turns into a one or something. So you are basically messing up from the hardware the logic of the code itself. And these are, if you look at it from a software perspective, I came from software too, and these were like uh, magic for me, right? how can somebody identify an encryption key without actually looking inside the hardware? Quite interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's how you get more deeper into all of these attacks.
Right. So, I mean, it sounds so complicated, and it sounds like you need to invest a lot of money into, let's say, if I want to know if a particular chip is vulnerable to side channel, it sounds like from your answer, there's a lot of math involved, there's a lot of electronics involved. But how easy is it for someone who has little, let's say, little experience in this embedded world, in terms of both in terms of effort as well as investment required to go down the open source approach?
Yeah, so and that's the answer lies in your question itself. That's how you essentially start. You will
Right.
typically take open source tooling or cheap tooling. Things like Chip Whisperer, that has become quite famous, is extremely good in what it does, and pocket friendly as well. And then there's now a plethora of information on what is the kind of maths that you need to do. And there are libraries, open source libraries built in, which will help you filter or scan the samples itself. So it's really not a matter of how difficult it is, but it is more a matter of uh, how how much time and you can devote to this, and how serious are you about it. So if it's a stick from your company, or a danda given, then you will probably do it within in a quarter or so, right? Or if you're
Okay.
really interested in doing it. So yeah, so
Yeah.
essentially nothing is difficult in today's world, because there's a lot of information available. If you just need to look at the right places.
Right, and more importantly, as you're rightly saying, most of the solutions, in at least to get started in hardware security, are quite pocket friendly. Right, you are essentially looking at something as, for example, Chip Whisperer. There's a nano board that I think retails for $20-30, which is essentially um, peanuts in terms of investment required for hardware security, right? And also, some if you invest, let's say, 200-300 dollars, you get something that is much more powerful, that you can even do semi-professional attacks on actual devices, right? Yeah, interesting. For someone who just don't have any insight into what is hardware security, right? What are some of the resources available to them to get started? Where should one look at, and where should one start? So that is one of the biggest problems that many students face, right? Look, I'm interested to know about embedded security, hardware security, but I don't know where to start. So where do you think one should start if someone wants to genuinely build a career in this domain?
Okay. I think one of the places is that a bunch of folks who have created this awesome hardware security and awesome IoT security lists. One is, I think, Veera Babu's list, and one is this institute, forget the name, Fraunhofer Institute. They've also created an awesome embedded and IoT security list, where they list down different open source initiatives in firmware, radio side, as well as hardware side. We have released an open source framework called Exploit, and really the idea of creating this framework in the first place was that we were like, boss, it's too difficult to do this manually. Now every time we have to study something and then figure out what library to use, then customize that library. It's getting a bit difficult. So how do we automate it? How do we make it more easy for startups and other companies to do a primary security assessment? And that's when we started working on this expertise framework. So basically, you can do pretty much protocol side scanning, as well as hardware side scanning, using the framework. So the idea is to make it as easy as possible for security folks.
Hmm. Hmm. So, see, one question that I have, I think many of the people already have this question is, how different and or difficult building for, let's say, if you're a blue teamer, you want to protect your devices, right? So how difficult is building solutions for hardware security compared to, let's say, building solutions for software security? And if you don't, so that is my first question, and then I'll ask a follow-up question after that.
All right. So as I mentioned, right, from a security or a defensive security perspective, the concepts again, the things that you need to look at on the hardware are pretty different from the software side. So till now, what has been happening was that people were just developing and they were more focused. So whenever security came into the discussion, it was more of, okay, use this encryption and you use TLS and you use this and try and secure the product. And everything was built on a ready-made hardware. So where you design, either you design a basic hardware and you say, okay, you use this microcontroller. This is where the firmware will reside, and then you put security on the software side. And that's what the challenge with the security of IoT products today is, that nobody actually looked at, what are the challenges with the hardware security. So I think it even starts before you think of software security. So like you have a process of secure SDLC, right? Within the design phase, now you need to fit in the hardware design phase as well. So when you're taking a decision on what kind of components, software components to use, you also need to take a decision on how your hardware design would be before you go ahead and say, okay, we'll start coding now, because you can't really patch hardware problems from software, right? If there is
Yeah,
a problem in the hardware, if it's a hardware component problem or a hardware problem, then it's
more or
probably
less
game over
unpatchable.
for the startup, because the only
True.
solution is you need to recall the product, and startups can't do that. So essentially, you are dead.
Yeah, you're bang on. Essentially, there is one very popular, the tracker that one of the biggest companies has developed. So that actually has a hardware level vulnerability, which essentially, with I think $10 investment, anyone could break their. I think. They can do a fault injection and unlock the chip, using which you can extract the firmware and reverse engineer it, and learning a lot of secrets, right? So if that happens to a startup, as you're rightly saying, product recall is the only option, because it's not patchable through software fixes, and it'll wreck, it'll essentially break the bone, break the backbone of the startup, right?
Yeah,
Interesting. And Aseem, can you tell us, let's say someone wants to be a part of this community, right? Let's say if someone wants to come to a conference, right? What are different conferences that are available specifically for hardware embedded IoT security in the world?
okay. Yeah. Before that, I just remembered when you were talking about that $10 thing. Was once we had this requirement of being able to bypass the security of the hardware, and we looked at various things. We did it with the software, but one of the most interesting things that the customer also loved was that we used these electric lighters that we use at home, like, and
Okay.
they were about probably $1 or $1.50.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just customized it and we used it to cause electromagnetic fault injection on the RAM, and we
No
bypassed
way.
the secure boot process. So and that's not fixable, right? This problem is not fixable. So that's
There's
the
no way.
impact and extent of it. Coming to
Right.
what are the various places, so there is null community in India and surrounding areas. We do a lot of stuff on software as well as hardware security. There is IoT security 101. That's a Telegram group, and the guy who runs this is Veera Babu. He's also the Null Bangalore chapter lead. So you can get in touch with him. Then there are
Yeah.
a bunch of conferences like hardware.io, which we do in the Netherlands and the US. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there are another some conferences called Post, which keeps moving, and there's another conference called Post. The good thing about the conferences is that the way we do the conferences is that there are a bunch of trainings as well, and these
Hmm.
trainings are specific to the subject. So if you really want to go in deep on a specific subject, then I think that is the best place. It's not just our conferences, any kind of conference, technical conferences in today's world,
Mm-hmm.
they will have specific advanced or intermediate level trainings on
Mm-hmm.
specific subjects. That
Hmm.
makes it very easy for people to decide where they want to excel.
Hmm. It's interesting, right? I mean, you're saying that there's a conference dedicatedly for hardware embedded IoT security happening in India, right? It's essentially, can you tell us something more about this conference? And essentially, it's also driven by you to some degree, also being community driven as well, right? Can you tell just a bit, some highlights about what happened this year, where it happened, what are different topics that you covered?
Okay. So we do this conference called Nalcon, which is a mix of software and hardware. But given our experience from hardware.io, we try and push a lot of hardware security content as well in the conference. So that folks can who can't travel outside India can at least take benefit from this. Then, as I mentioned, the community, Null community itself, we have chapters all across, uh, and the Bangalore chapter lead is the guy who runs IoT Security 101
Mm-hmm.
community as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you're in Bangalore, then you can attend the Bangalore meets. But if you're in other cities, then you can attend like Null Delhi or Null Pune, Null Bombay meets, and suggest or propose hardware security sessions as well. And then
Certainly.
it's our conferences, but they're in the Europe and US.
Certainly. Yeah. So with that, I think we have arrived at the end of the discussion. Thank you so much, Aseem, for such an insightful discussion. I certainly learned a lot, and then I'm sure the audience have a lot of takeaways from this session as well. With that, thank you everyone for attending today's session, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you, Aseem. Thank you, audience, for your
Thank
time.
you, Teja.
Of
Thank you,
course.
DSCI.
Thanks. Bye bye. You have a good one all.